Many of you know the very famous equation by Albert Einstein. It's a very incredible equation that's so simple as well. E equals mc squared. The equation means that if you take mass, you can convert it to energy. Now here's the amazing part. When the atomic bomb landed over Hiroshima, only 700 milligrams of material converted from matter to energy. Can you imagine? This is a dime right here. And less than 1/3 of this is about 700 milligrams. And that's how much mass converted to that explosive energy. And when you think of all of us, our sizes, everything in the room, the building, if everything were to be converted into energy, can you imagine the incredible power that would be? And here's the amazing part. God holds it all together. Every molecule in every planet, in every star, which is in every galaxy throughout the entire universe, God is holding all of them together by His great power. Isn't that overwhelming and amazing to think how big our God is? There is no person, no demon, no nothing that can compare to the greatness of God's power. He is incredible. He is amazing. And we see that in our passage today as we continue through our series of the book of Daniel. We come to Daniel chapter 10. In this chapter, we will see a story that unfolds. We will look at it in a type of study format, and then I'd like for us at the end to look at 4 different applications out of the passage. So let's look at Daniel 10, and first of all, let's look at the introduction in verse 1. It says, "In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the message was true and one of great conflict. But he understood the message and had an understanding of the vision." Now we need to realize here that this is the 4th time Daniel has received a vision. The first one, chronologically, was during the 1st year of Belshazzar, who was the last king of the Babylonian Empire. Then Daniel received another vision in the 3rd year of Belshazzar. He received a 4th vision in the 1st year of Cyrus, who was the first of the Persian kings. And now we have one in the 3rd year. And I want you to keep in mind also that as Daniel is thinking of all of this and the time, he's thinking, wow, I came over here 70 years ago into the land of the Babylonians. Cyrus is now the king. And now he's starting to send people back. The 70 years is over with. What is God going to do? His mind is racing. And in that time period, he wanted so much to say, God, what is to come? Which leads us to the next part in verses 2 through 3. We have Daniel's desperation to know, God, what do you have in store for us as Israel? Verse 2, he says, "In those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 entire weeks." And for those of you who were here last Sunday night, you remember how we studied the phrase 70 sevens. And some people thought it meant 70 weeks. Some people have other different interpretations, and it turns out each week meant 7 years. Well, it's funny how when Daniel wrote this, that the God of this whole universe wanted to make sure he was accurate here. So in the literal original language, it says 3 weeks of days to make sure it's what we know of today as a 7-day week. And it's also during the Passover. As we read this time period, we see he's been praying for 24 days or 21 days. It was in the 1st month, Nisan, and also Passover is always on the 14th day of that month. So he's praying through that first day of the year. He's praying into the new year. He's praying into this new season that God has for Israel. Just like Jesus did when he began his ministry. He began with 40 days and nights of fasting to receive the beginning from the Lord. What do you want to do? So he's desperate. He wants to know a word from the Lord. In verse 3, I did not eat any tasty food, nor did meat or wine enter my mouth, nor did I use any ointment at all until the entire 3 weeks were completed. This was a partial fast, similar to the one he had in Daniel chapter 1. Remember, all he ate was water and vegetables. So he's doing that again right now, but the main point to pull out is he's desperate for the Lord to speak to him. And I want us to evaluate our own hearts right now. Who are we compared to Jesus, who began his ministry? He's the Son of God, and he still prayed and fasted for 40 days to hear from the Lord. Here's Daniel, a man known to the angels as a very blessed and holy man, an upright man. And even he is desperately seeking the Lord. I mean, look at all he had accomplished in his lifetime. He's now in his 80s, and he's still desperate for the Lord. That should be a desire in our hearts as well. But now we come to verses 4 through 9. It's already been read partially, and this passage is the appearance of Jesus Christ. Can you imagine? Daniel's already seen angels. He's already seen monsters. He's seen a ram with 2 horns, and it goes against a goat with 1 horn. It loses its 1 horn, and it gains 10 horns. And all these monsters, and he's always been troubled. But now he's about to see a vision of Jesus Christ, the holy, perfect, wonderful Son of God. Let's look at how he replies. Verse 4, on the 24th day of the first month, while I was by the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen. The appearance is white, purity. This is the God of the whole universe, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold, of Uphaz, or however you pronounce that. His body also was like beryl. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet like the gleam of polished bronze, and the sound of his words were like the sound of a tumult. What an incredible presentation of God before Daniel. And then in verse 7, now I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, while the men who were with me did not see the vision. Nevertheless, a great dread fell on them, and they ran away to hide themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. For my natural color turned to a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength. But I heard the sound of his words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. Coming into the presence of Jesus floored Daniel. He went unconscious, you could say. He passed out at the greatness, the wonder, the amazement of God. Isn't it amazing how all the people in the Bible did that, except for those when Jesus was in his human form? Isaiah said to all these wicked people of the land, woe to them, God, woe to those people for being evil. And then in the next chapter it says, he looked up and he saw the glory of the Lord, and the first words out of Isaiah's mouth was, woe is me. Simon Peter's out fishing. He's struggling. He can't get anything done. Jesus will just throw your net over to the other side. It completely fills up, and Simon Peter says to Jesus, part from me, for I am a sinner. From just telling him, put your net on the other side of the boat? Yes, because that's the way God is. He's awesome. He's incredible. Then you have John, the apostle, who actually spent time with Jesus for over 3 years on a daily basis. He touched him. He heard him. He saw him. But then one day he was able to be at the Mount of Transfiguration. He goes, wow, we've never seen this much glory in Jesus before. And then on the island of Patmos, the same guy, Apostle John, sees the glory of the Lord so amazing. It says in Revelation chapter 1, I fell at his feet as dead. Job, going through all of his problems, finally starts to gripe. You don't have a right to do this to me, God. And at the very end, he says, I have heard of you by the hearing of my ears, but now my eye sees you. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. Do you get the awareness from the Bible that the God of this universe is big and holy and pure? And then you talk to people in public and you ask them about their relationship with God. Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I talk to him every day. In fact, he gives me everything I ask for. And I'm thinking, who is your God? Sounds more like a slave on your southern plantation. Did you ask him what to do or order him what to do? You crack the whip and he just does it. The people who tell me that never fall on their faces when they say, yes, I have met him. When we meet the Lord in an amazing way, there may be times of being jovial. There may be times of saying, what a wonderful God he is because he's forgiven me of my sins. But we cannot deny the fact that every person in the Bible who met God face to face in his glory fell down on his face. God is huge. Daniel never did this before any of the angels because God is a billion, trillion times greater. As we move on, we see the amazing things that take place now from an angel. An angel comes up to Daniel. We have Daniel's comfort from what we're calling an interpreting angel. Verse 10, then behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. So this is improvement. He was flat on his face. Now he's up on his hands and knees. This 80-plus-year-old man, he's gaining strength. He's getting up. Now in verse 11, he said to me, O Daniel, man of high esteem. It just amazes me. Why is it that the godliest people in the Bible are the ones who are falling down on their face before God? Who are we? And the angel calls Daniel by the respect those angels have towards him. Oh, man of high esteem, understand the words that I'm about to tell you and stand upright. For I have now been sent to you, and when he has spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. We have progress. He was on his face. He was on his hands and knees. Now he's up, but he's trembling. And it's not because of his age. Verse 12, then he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart on understanding this and on humbling yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days. Then, behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Boy, these last couple of verses throw a huge curveball into our thinking. What's going on? First of all, I want to make sure I say this during the message. When Jesus wanted to come before Daniel, he didn't have to fight anybody. He just comes. He's the God of the whole universe. He does whatever he wants to do. He's in charge. Angels are a little bit different because they're both good angels and bad angels. They both have the same amount of strength, you might say. I guess in an arm wrestling contest, it would be a tie between an angel and a demon. To some extent, I mean, they're made the same. So what's going on here? Do you notice that it said Michael the archangel? Earlier, we mentioned that in verse 10, an angel came to interpret for him. We don't know who that is, but scholars believe that one was probably Gabriel because Gabriel spoke to him in a previous chapter and for other reasons. So maybe Gabriel's been speaking and now he says, Michael came to help me as I was fighting the prince of Persia. Well, who is the prince of Persia? And may I add, what's this whole discussion about spiritual warfare? I'm fully aware that there are books and volumes and video series on spiritual warfare. And I'm not being mean towards them, but I'm going to explain spiritual warfare in just a few seconds. Angels and demons used to be all angels before God. Then a huge percentage of them said, we don't want anything to do with God anymore. We want to rebel because we have a rebellious spirit. And the part that's always so funny to me about rebels is they come together and form a gang or a group, and the first thing they do is put together rules to obey. Why are they doing that? Because they're a rebel. Wait a minute, well, why didn't you just get together and form new rules? Because the problem is not obeying and rebelling. The issue is, I don't want to obey God, period. Or I want to obey God. Those are our only options. We don't mind obeying a demon all day long if I'm a rebel. The choice is either do I obey God or do I obey Satan? And all of our choices are the same throughout the day. We either obey God or we obey the demons. Notice this is a prince over Persia. They have authority structures, like I just mentioned. There's a prince over Persia. There's a prince over Greece, as we see in a little bit later. There's a prince over Russia, one over Japan, one over the United States. And there's an organizational structure under them. There is a top dog. But since Persia is the most powerful force on earth at the time of this writing, many scholars believe this is Satan. Why would he let someone else be in charge of Persia? I mean, he's going to be the top dog. Where was he during World War II? I don't know. My personal opinion is maybe he was a close companion of Adolf Hitler. I don't know. He could have been in any other direction. But he's in a place where he can make the greatest influence. So there's an authority structure. And as we go through this, I want us to realize they have no power over you other than what you permit it to have. They have, if I may use human words, they have bigger muscles, they can accomplish more physically, but they're totally in subjection to you. That is spiritual warfare. Total obedience of the angels towards you. If you play with a Ouija board, what are you doing? You are opening the front door of your spiritual heart and saying, demons, come on in. They don't have to deceive you and trick you and sneak into your life. You play with witchcraft of any sort. You're physically, literally opening the door and saying, come on into my life and take control. When you give them permission, they have control, and they have it for the rest of your life until you respond in a way that gets rid of them. When you do something holy and righteous, you empower the angels. Now, I know this is a silly illustration using food because angels don't eat. But when you do something evil, you feed the demons. When you do something righteous, you feed the angels. There's an old Chinese proverb about a guy struggling with what to do, right or wrong, and it says, there are two dogs within me. The one that wins is the one I feed the most. If we're under demonic oppression, it's because we're opening the door and feeding them. We're choosing it. Is there no wonder the Bible literally says rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft? when we rebel against our authorities, whoever the authorities are, as long as we're not violating God's ways. But if your boss tells you to take the trash out, you take the trash out. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. So telling a boss no is the same thing as playing with a Ouija board. It's having our palms read. It's reading the horoscopes. It's having a rabbit's foot. It's having any good luck charm that we're putting our trust in a thing rather in God. We literally open up our heart to the demonic and say, okay, let me empower you. Or do we empower the angels? That's all spiritual warfare is. Who are you empowering? That explains what's going on between the Prince of Persia and Gabriel. Who's getting fed the most? In Persia, the people are living riotous lifestyles. Man, they're getting banquet meals full every day, the demons. I mean, they're just all full of energy. The angels are hoping for scraps off the table to get enough energy to fight. Because there are not enough believers in Persia who believe in God with their whole heart. I mean, there were the Jews, but the Jews didn't have a heart for God. If they did, their angels would have overpowered the demons. And the same can be said in America. Let's move on to the thought of Ephesians 6. Some people say, but aren't we supposed to fight demons? What does Ephesians 6 say? The helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, the sword of the Spirit, the shield of faith. What is that? Obeying the Lord. You empower the angels to fight the demons just by living a righteous life. And there's no way a demon can come into your life and affect you unless you have personally opened the door at some point in your life and given another area of your soul to the devil. And we've all done it with little ways, big ways. That's all spiritual warfare is. Who are you empowering? It even works at the elections. Who gets the most votes? It kind of works the same way in the spiritual realm. If 100 godly people are living righteously and there are only 50 unbelievers, I mean, the overwhelming force, they feel conviction, they want to change. But when the majority of people in America are so full of selfishness and perversion and grossness, and only a few Christians, man, the demons are just so empowered. Let's go to Daniel chapter 10, verse 15. Because of what this Gabriel angel has said, Daniel is exhausted. Verse 15, he says, when he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless. Doesn't mean he fell on his face and passed out. He just simply turned his head downward. And behold, one who resembled a human being was touching my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke and said to him who was standing before me, Oh, my Lord, as a result of the vision, anguish has come upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can such a servant of my Lord talk with such as my Lord? As for me, there remains just now no strength in me, nor has any breath been left in me. I find this passage to be somewhat comical. You know me well enough. It's like I find a bunch of things to be funny. But why is he so out of energy? The same reason we are. And then all of a sudden something happens in the day and we're full of energy. You women are so tired. You've had a really rough day. Oh, you can't do anything else. And then your girlfriend calls you up and says, let's go to the mall. And all of a sudden you're energized. It's like, where did that come from? The same thing's going to happen here. It's not a physical thing. It's what we believe that's defeating us. Oh, this is terrible. What's going to happen to me? Oh, my life is going to come to an end. So look what happens. The angel speaks to him again in chapter 10, verse 18. Then this one with human appearance touched me again and strengthened me. He said, O man of high esteem, do not be afraid. Peace be with you. Take courage and be courageous. Now, as soon as he spoke to me, I received strength. Isn't it amazing how we all do that? Oh no, I lost my job. Oh, the end of the world is coming. Oh, this is such a terrible day. Oh, I can't believe, what am I going to do with all these bills? 5 minutes later, hey, I heard you lost your job. I'm willing to hire you at my place for $100 an hour. Oh, isn't life wonderful? Oh, where did the energy come from? Our physical body hasn't changed one bit. It's all in what we believe. And when we find out that the God of the whole universe runs and controls everything, and He loves us, we're able to have a peace which passes understanding, a love which cannot be understood, and a joy that is unspeakable. Oh, God gives it all when we know the truth. Isn't that amazing? That's two parts of the spiritual armor. The sword of the Spirit, which is the word of truth, but also the belt of truth. Let's move on. The middle part of verse 19. May my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me, just with words. That's all. Verse 20. Then he said, do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. Then, oh, wow, he just spent 3 weeks fighting the prince of Persia, probably Satan. Now he's got, in order to leave, he's got to go fight the prince of Persia again. So I'm going forth. Behold, the prince of Greece is about to come. What's happening? Remember in our previous stories that Greece is going to overcome the Persian Empire approximately 332, 331 BC. And when Greece conquers, my opinion, Satan's no longer the prince of Persia. He now chooses to be the prince of Greece because Greece is in charge. So now he's got to fight the prince of Greece later on. Verse 21, however, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth, yet there is no one who stands firmly with me against these forces except Michael, notice, your prince. I'm thinking, every commentary keeps quoting this verse and saying Michael is the prince of Israel. I said, how can they keep saying that? And then I looked up in the original language, is it singular or plural? And it says plural, your prince. And after all my studying, then I look at first verse of chapter 12, and there it is again, the prince of Israel. Okay, that would have saved me some time. But chapter 11, verse 1, believe this or not, it's very possible the first verse of chapter 11 goes with chapter 10. So the angel is still speaking. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. So there's our passage with some amazing stuff. And by the way, chapter 11 is the actual vision. This was all preliminary for the vision. But I want us to look at points for application right now. And the first one is to trust God. He is sovereign, the sovereign supreme being over everything. He controls whether your boss hires you or fires you. He controls whether Trump wins or Biden wins or Obama wins or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. God's in control of everything. Well, why is it that evil seems to prevail at times and righteousness seems to prevail? Could it be that those forces are being fed? Is it possible when the whole nation says we don't need God, let's do our own thing, that we're actually feeding the demonic? And the goofiness and the deception and the weirdness of the world just keeps getting worse and worse? I cannot believe that just recently you could walk up to a building and say, I'm a female, I'm going to go into this room. Or I'm a male and I'm going to go in this room. Who would have believed that this coming November there will be an issue on the ballot that says parents have no say-so in whether or not their child wants to change over from boy or girl to boy, to be put into our Constitution? Can you fathom that? And the craziest part about it is sin never stands still. It's just going to keep getting worse. So how do you stop it? Do we fight? Do we get on the phone and yell? We just saw it in the passage. If we live righteously, we will defeat the enemy because we will feed the angels. We empower the angels. Trust God. He really is in control. Jesus never got upset when he was on earth because he knew he was in control of everything. He didn't have anxiety problems. And he knew he was going to go through more than any of us would ever go through. He went through more than what all of us combined will go through. He didn't have anxieties because God is in control. The next point for us to pull out of this is to follow in Daniel's example. Be desperate for God all week long. Not just Sunday morning from 11 to 12. Can you imagine going to church 11 to 12 and feeding the angels, and for the other 167 hours a week we're feeding the demons? That doesn't make sense. It's said that a permeating understanding of church is we go to church to be recharged. That should never be. We get recharged from Jesus. And when we come together for church on Sundays, we're all excited, ready to share what Jesus has done for us through the week. Sunday should be a gathering of a celebration. Isn't God big? What did he do for you? What did he do for you? It's like, this is so exciting. But if we wait for God to fill us up only between 11 and 12 on Sunday, we're drained. You know how computers and watches and all these things do when you have to recharge them. You sit and you wait and you wait and you wait. We can't wait all week long to get recharged in just 1 hour. I think it'd be neat to have some type of meter attached to our bodies on how full we got because we went to church. It was only 60 minutes. I think the meter would go up only about this high. Full capacity could be like this. And then we try to live the whole week on this much energy. How desperate are we to seek the Lord? Him all by himself, without music, noise, anything, just God. And I'm not saying music to the side. Sometimes that inspires some people even more. But the point is, God is the joy, not a movie or a devotional book. It's God himself. Let's move on to the third thing. Empower angels, not demons, with your beliefs and choices. What you believe will determine whether or not angels or demons are empowered. If something tragic happens and you begin to be afraid, you just empowered the demons. Really, truly, we empower demons just by being afraid. Oh, my God can't handle it. We just gave the demonic permission to hover over us and cause weirdness, whatever they do. But when you say, oh, yeah, something else happened. I just had my car to be totaled. Oh, yeah, my whole house burned down. Okay, that's fine. They belong to God anyway, so that's fine. He meets my needs. We empower the angelic forces by our beliefs. But if someone comes in and tries to attack us, I know there's a sense God places fear in us, so we will fight back. But there's also a sense of we don't need to be afraid of so many things. God is in control. When we disobey God, we actually feed the demonic. When we obey God, we feed the angelic forces. Let me give a real-life illustration. Asbury University is, of course, years ago it was Asbury College. Back in 1970, God's presence was so powerful in the room. Can you imagine the vast majority of people, hundreds of people in this building? That meant within that authority structure, within that domain, all these people totally submissive. I mean, their hearts are crying out, they're confessing. The angels are being fed big time. The demonic is not getting much of anything. I doubt they're even getting crumbs. And the media shows up with their cameras to take pictures. They can't. They literally fall down on their faces because the presence of God is so mighty. That happened again just a few months ago. People are showing up with cameras and they can't. They place the cameras down. Why? Because the angelic presence, the holiness of the majority of the people is causing godliness to win over. Why is God not winning in the churches? Is it because too many demons are being fed and not enough angels? And for us to realize, really, is that all? Did we just give ourselves totally to the Lord? We could impact this whole community? Yes, because that's the truth. And if we believe the truth, we can be victorious. It might not have a powerful impact over the entire United States or all of Ohio, but we could take over this area because we could dedicate our lives totally to the Lord and empower enough angels to win out. We have 2 of Asbury University students coming in a month and a half from now. I hope you will be here to hear their testimony. But I want us to move on to the 4th and final point, and that is to yield to God's agenda and timing. Yield to God's agenda. Daniel didn't quit after a few days. Well, I'm tired of trying to get an answer from God. Is it possible he had to have 3 weeks worth of energy to give to the angelic forces to overcome the demonic? The point is, don't give up. Don't quit. I've heard many people quit their jobs and afterwards cry saying, I wish I had not quit my job. I hear many people who quit their church. They don't do enough for me. They don't love me, so I quit. And they're out there just all alone again. One of the craziest reputations I got when I had a job of delivering furniture is I would drive the truck sometimes over an hour to the destination. And I've memorized the map visually. That was before GPS. I don't like GPS anyway most of the time. But if I can get the big picture and know where it is, and I think we've passed it. And I would turn the truck around and go back. And some guys who were with me several times would finally get upset with me. Randy, would you just go one more block? Because it was true. I don't know how it happened, but I would always quit 1 block before we get to the destination. And I think God allowed that in my life to teach me, Randy, there are going to be some times in your life you're going to feel like quitting. Don't quit. Keep going forward. Will you trust God that He is going to win? Will you empower the positive angelic forces around us by keeping on doing what is right? I'd like to conclude with one true story, and that is, in case you guys don't know it, the demonic forces are pretty strong today. One of them is the computer that's in charge of Facebook, obviously controlled by people. Well, they don't like some of the things that I'm saying in the messages, so Facebook will no longer allow me to upload any more of the messages there. One of our members is complaining on Facebook because they wiped him out of some stuff, and he's very vocal with some of the stuff he puts on Facebook. What's our response? Should we be fearful? Oh no, Facebook is bigger than God. Are you kidding? They can't do anything. They can't even get near God. God is so big and so holy. So what if other people do what they do to us? God always writes the last chapter. He always has a positive ending. Let's be faithful in whatever He has in store for us, no matter how much we're hated, no matter how much people pick at us, whatever they do, you remain faithful and give your life totally to Jesus. Would you bow your heads for prayer? Will you recommit right now to the truth that God is in control of everything? Would you also yield your rights, your desires, your plans? Yield everything to Him. Let Him take control of everything. And will you just trust in Him? And even if you don't see the results after years, will you remain faithful knowing that every bit of energy that you're putting into it spiritually is gaining compounded interest somehow, some way? And when God finally uses the energy that you've been storing up through your godliness and your scripture meditation and your prayers and your godly living, when it finally comes out, you will grin from ear to ear, saying, "My God is big." It was worthy of me to experience all of that, to see God do a great work. Oh God, truly you are mighty, you're wonderful, you're incredible, you are definitely more than we can possibly imagine. I know that the things that we pray for are usually just totally petty compared to your infinite power. I ask that you would move mightily through all of us, that the whole community will know how big you are through what you're doing here. And may that impact spread throughout the entire world, because you can do it. You are big enough. We can't do anything. We've been trying for years, but you can do everything. So would you do a great work? May we find you in the same way Daniel did, being pure and holy and wonderful. May we submit to you completely as well. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.